Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Time Extend. My name is Adam Ismail, and joining me today is...
Brendan Rorison, and it's not just myself here today, Adam. We actually have our other two co-hosts with us too. So, Paul, take it away.
Hey, hello. How you doing, everyone? Thank you for having me on the show.
And we got Andrew Elmore too.
Beware, I live. Hi, hello.
Yeah. It's so we can see each other like we're talking. We have our cameras on. And Andrew looks like he's in some kind of dark void.
Look, we got some. I admit, you know what? Never mind. I'm abandoning the bit I was going for in favor of pretending I'm in the video game Dark Void. Start doing some vertical platforming. Let's see, what else do I remember about Dark Void? Somebody else fan for me.
Do you run in it? Is it a game that involves running?
Kind of. It's more jetpacking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see where you're going.
Nolan North in it as well. So it's it was one of those third-person action games that were all the rage back in 2013. I want to say. Maybe?
Oh, it's older than that.
Is it really older than that?
Yeah.
Wow, geez.
It's like 08, 09 or something.
Holy shit! Right, okay. way off.
It's the bridge between Crimson Skies and Uncharted.
Yeah.
Welcome to Time Extend, a racing game podcast.
Well,
yeah,
it's
or
not
is
necessarily completely true now, is it? We are, for topic today, for example, this kind of harks back to what we were talking about in the last episode, doesn't it, Adam? We're branching out a bit.
Yeah, so for some reason, I mean, it was sort of a joke. I can't remember who came up with it, if it was like me or you, Brend, but someone said, what if we made like our first big podcast back with Andrew and Paul, who are going to be joining us on more shows. What if we made it about running games? And then it kind of just stuck and stopped being a joke, and now we're here going to talk about running games for like an hour plus.
That is Time Extend now. Obviously, we've talked about all the driving and vehicle games ever made, so now we're just going to focus specifically on games where you run. Of course, I'm joking. This is probably be a one-off, but you never know. It might turn out to be an absolute hit, and we find a niche that we didn't know existed within the content space.
Yeah, so there are a number of games where, shockingly, the running happens in a lot of video games, but for a while it seemed like they were trying to make racing games out of running. And on top of that, like, the two games I'm going to be talking about are ostensibly racing games, but we're also talking about games that are like kind of harder to define. Brend, you have, anyone who's been listening to the show since the beginning is going to know what you're going to be talking about. And Paul and Andrew are going to be talking about a game that I literally do not know. Like, it's not a racing game. I don't know what you call it. So we're going to be pretty much like running the gamut of games where you run. Yeah, bad joke.
I like how we're keeping it simple. You should just name this episode Run as well. Just like
Sure. Push run button.
Try
There
and
you go.
keep people's
Yeah.
interest.
It's a PC engine.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if we could really set this up in any sort of way that's going to make sense. So let's just get into it, Brent. Kick us off. We're going to be each talking about a couple games. So what you got for us?
No, I'm absolutely happy to open things up because this whole episode was just a gambit to talk about the one and only Pepsi Man anyway. So to take it from the top for anybody who is uncultured, Pepsi Man is a PlayStation 1 game where you play as the titular character Pepsi Man, and your goal is to ensure that everybody is well hydrated, or refreshed, probably a better term for fizzy drinks, and nobody dies. So like those are the two kind of extreme scenarios Pepsi Man deals with. And in the Pepsi Man game, you basically play like a structured version of like Temple Run, I would say is probably the best example to compare it to. So if anybody played the Temple Run game back on kind of the mobile phones, kind of first iPhone, iPod Touch era, it's very similar to that. But the thing about Pepsi Man is it's actually pretty fun. So I guess like just an opening question for you guys as well. Have any of you played it? Or have you completed it as well?
I've never played it. I know of its existence and I remember it being coming when it came out, but nope, never. And I don't know anyone that ever really played it apart from you, actually, to be honest.
My first exposure to Pepsi Man was in was it Fighting Vipers?
Oh yeah, good point actually.
There you go.
I forgot he was in
First
Fighting
and
Vipers.
only.
Yeah, I've goofed around with Pepsi Man in emulators before, but that game is, unsurprisingly for a meme, very expensive, so I don't have it. I do have Fighting Vipers, but that is the only Pepsi Man I have controlled off a physical disc. Other than that, it's just like a thing I messed around with a long time ago. I'm aware. That's about it. I don't know. I played it once, and I think I died really fast, and was like, okay, well, there was a novelty here. I think now that I'm, a little more advanced in age and maturity and, media literacy, I think I might be able to find some more there to appreciate these days. Please feel free to enlighten us about the momentum of this shiny, shiny boy.
Well, I think it's kind of entered that cult status era. I don't think the game itself really kind of contributes to that, but the weirdness of Pepsi Man as a thing. Because, obviously, once that kind of became known, it became a joke in that way, and then obviously kind of popular YouTube content creators picked it up with random because you always see these videos about advertising games and that sort of thing, and then there's that really creepy video of the guy dressed up as Pepsi Man dancing and doing weird stuff to Pepsi bottles and that sort of thing, and basically the character is probably more iconic than the game itself. But I think I've said before on the podcast, but the reason that I became the reason I basically understood or knew about Pepsi Man was because I had one of the guys who got you PlayStation 1 games at Winkface when you were younger. So basically, when you did the old disc swap trip to play copied games and that sort of thing, my dad's friend, Peter, shout out if you're listening, would just basically hand us 30 discs, unmarked, unnamed. And the fun part was just basically doing the old disc swap trick and seeing what you got. Sometimes it was a Resident Evil, sometimes it was a Ridge Racer Type 4, sometimes it was a weird Bishoujo game, visual novel game, which actually ties into this nicely later on, believe it or not. And then sometimes it's Pepsi Man as well. So you just never knew what you were going to get. And Pepsi Man became a bit of an icon in the Rodison household, just because, once again, the reason it became a cult classic is the reason that everybody in the house kind of knew about it, because I'd be sitting in the room playing the PlayStation and just blaring through the household. You'd hear that fantastic theme song, just blaring Pepsi Man over and over and over again. So I actually do have a very long-standing history with the game, so much so I was in the rare position where something that I was already aware of became a kind of well-known thing later on, in the kind of internet kind of prestige and that sort of thing. So it's pretty cool being on that side of things, because oftentimes we hear about once again, maybe not the greatest comparison, but Racing Lagoon and that side of things, when it's the first time you hear about it. In Pepsi Man's case, I was already very aware of the shiny boy. And when we were talking about running games, he was always going to be the choice for me. So I guess just from a backstory perspective, that's how I am aware of Pepsi Man. And like you were saying, Andrew, I've always wanted to own a physical copy of it, just for the bants, basically. Very expensive, and the trip to Japan I had in November, which was for the sole reason of finding Pepsi Man. Danielle wasn't aware of that, but that was the whole reason we went.
The man himself, not a copy of the video game. To be clear, you were trying to hunt down your hero, I believe, right?
Oh, absolutely. Not the video game, the real boy, the real shiny boy. Found a lot of narrow alleyways and stuff, trying to see if he would be running down them, but sadly not. But yeah, it's a weird kind of cult hit now. But actually finding a copy of it, super expensive, and the actual gameplay itself, a lot of people I think who are aware of Pepsi Man probably haven't played the game. But to be honest, I do think it's worthwhile. It's, like I said, it's a very simple game, basically, in effect, where you have very kind of set time-based levels, where you start at the start of a level and you get to the end, very linear. For every 2 levels there's a boss, so it's not as if it's this crazy structure, but it's a very refined experience as well. So you can basically play it for an hour and complete it, which, to be honest, is a good thing, because the gameplay loop isn't complex like I'm saying, but it's actually pretty enjoyable and challenging as well in equal measure. The checkpoints are very harsh, especially towards the end of the game when you get to Pepsi City. Yeah, it's a good game because you can pretty much speedrun it in an hour, but you still get a good amount of enjoyment and surreal nature from it, because it takes itself very seriously, I feel like. There's the thing a lot of people know about it is the very strange FMV videos. Don't know if any of you guys have seen it.
I just watched this for the first time in my life. And oh my god. I mean, first of all, you watch a man basically like... and also, it's in the US. Like, it's clearly recorded.
Yeah.
Like, it's filmed here. At least where I am. And this guy just, like, guzzles a Pepsi can. And you watch him excruciatingly for, like, a minute. And then he, like, looks inside the can and he finds Pepsi Man.
And that's just reality. Like,
yeah.
You just drank that man's house. It was rude.
So what's the history of the game? Was it like obviously it's an advertising, but was it made as a promotional piece of software? Was it actually a game that was released that you bought? It wasn't something that was free with 10 cans of Pepsi or something.
So it was a full-on retail game, part of a kind of budget pricing you would see in the Japanese retail stores. From what I can see, sometimes in physical copies of the game, you can still see like that kind of budget branding you would see.
I'm looking at a copy of it right now. The Obi strip has a 2,800 yen tag printed on it.
And it only came out in Japan, is that right?
Japan only, yeah. But through the power of the Great Seas piracy, I guess,
the market,
it found its way
market
through. Yeah, exactly. That's it. And based on anybody who did have kind of exposure to the game prior to like emulation really kicking off and stuff, it does seem as if it was mainly kind of distributed in European markets and African markets as well. Apparently, it's got a big following in Egypt. One of my Egyptian friends let me know. Once again, just must have so happened to pop off there. But yeah, that's kind of the history of how it came about. And the developer, it's
right.
Yeah, so the developer of the game is called Kid. It's Kindle Imagine Develop, I believe. Yeah. Very strange choice of developer for this game, which is why I wanted to bring it up. Basically, their entire portfolio of games, aside from Pepsi Man, is in the Bishoujo visual novel scene. So basically, like kind of romance visual novels, or a kind of visual novel centered around like schoolgirls and that sort of thing, like kind of that sort of game. But pretty much all of what they did, aside from a few examples, was very much predicated towards that style of game. So it's pretty interesting that Pepsi Man was like the one of the games of a few where they went, you know what, we're making an exception, we're breaking our company mantra and we're really going for it, we want to nail Pepsi Man, and for my money they did. So yeah, it's 10 points to Kid for that.
They also made G.I. Joe and Battle Grand Prix for the SNES. I don't know, the SNES has like 14 million F1 games and I know nothing about them.
Yeah, so they have racing heritage. So, I mean, once again, it's fitting in this theme of Time Extend nicely, but...
There you go.
Yeah, the thing about Pepsi Man in general is just it's a very surreal experience from start to finish, because in some levels it's like people are absolutely raging that there's no Pepsi left in the vending machine, so you basically destroy San Francisco to get there and get them their Pepsi. And then in the second level, it's more about the fact that there's like a massive fire, kind of like a Chicago type level, and there's people stuck on the roof, but they need their Pepsi because they're thirsty. So the fireman's like, don't worry, we've got that side of things, we can sort the fire, but all the people we've evacuated to the roof for some reason, they really need that Pepsi. So once again, that's where that level takes you.
The last vending machine in the building is on the at the top.
Yeah, exactly, that's it. And if you're told, listen, we can get to the ground floor potentially and get to safety, or we can go to the top floor and get a Pepsi and then go back down, you're always going to go for that second option, of course.
Get your blood sugar up, you know.
Yeah, exactly, that's it. But in the third level, I believe I always remember it being pretty random because it doesn't really seem to fit the theme of anything, but there's no real overarching narrative for the third level. It's just that you're kind of running on a highway similar to like Route 66 or something. What I did learn when I got older and seen the adverts for Pepsi Man is it's based around one of the ads, I believe. That one, so that's kind of where it comes from. But the funniest thing about the third level is that the boss, so like the bosses in the game are always basically one big thing chasing you, as a lot of games in that era are. First level is like a Pepsi can. The second, big massive Pepsi can. The second one is a Coca-Cola truck that's chasing you, but obviously debranded, so they don't stoke the flames too much of that
Large
great
red
Pepsi
semi,
Coca-Cola
yeah.
war. Yeah, that's it. I actually think in the adverts it's like a pizza company, like Big Red Pizza or something like that, but it's definitely the Pepsi logo. And the third boss is just like a massive truck carrying loads of logs, and then that truck crashes and the logs all fall off the truck, but they like form like a sentient oval like the other things, and just like kind of mash together and chase you, because obviously logs hate Pepsi Man for some reason. Yeah, it's pretty strange.
Rivalry as old as time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If it's not Coca-Cola, it's logs. That's just the way it goes. Then the final level, the big crescendo, is at Pepsi City, as mentioned earlier, which is a full city dedicated to Pepsi. And
Oh, sorry, really quick editor note. That's actually just what American cities look like, Brent. No.
really? Oh, I wish you'd told me already before we started recording, Andrew.
Sorry,
that would have added more
I thought
context
everyone knew
for me.
that. My bad.
But I think like the plot in this one is like the Pepsi lab is going to self-destruct for some reason. So Pepsi Man has to run through Pepsi City and go to the depths of the Pepsi lab to stop the self-destruct button, if I remember right. And yeah, I mean that's the plot line. It doesn't get much better than that. I heard Naughty Dog use that as the basis for The Last of Us, and they just kind of tweaked it a little bit. Yeah,
Jokes aside, that's a better plot than The Last of Us. I'm unemployed now, I can say that.
I'm glad I'm selling it.
You know, I've like never watched any of these ads, and I definitely missed out on something here, because like they're weird, actually surprisingly horny. I wasn't really expecting it to go in that direction, but a number of these are involve women like bathing by the beach and shit. Now he's like diving off of a building into a hotel pool. Now he's on a plane. Now he's skiing. This is a fascinating
He
act.
does, yeah.
Adventurous individual.
Yeah. He does it all. Pepsi Man really did it all. I feel like this game is actually, if anything else, it's kind of like limiting him a little bit, you know?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, he gets to ride a skateboard at one part, which is pretty sick. But I just wish they included more of the backstory of Pepsi Man himself, because basically the idea is some sort of scientist that comes into contact with holy Pepsi, and then that turns him into Pepsi Man.
Who among us has not encountered the holy Pepsi?
They don't still use Pepsi Man as a mascot, do they?
No,
it's
sadly
a shame.
not.
That really is a shame.
It really is. That the lengths the character goes to get Pito Pepsi is definitely something that transcends years. So like 2024, it could be the year of Pepsi Man. If Pepsi have their head on their shoulders, they'll know exactly that. You know.
Reminds me of like, if you sanded a lot of the edges off, and I don't know, it reminds me a lot of the Burger King thing from, you know, back in the Sneak King era days, the big bump and the pocket bike racers, things of this nature. You know, the Steve Bannon specials. That I feel like that was kind of that like last era of people trying to do something with advertising before everyone just kind of realized that this stuff doesn't work. Without getting into the whole collapse of the ad economy that we're looking at now, but I feel like there is, if not for the direction that everything got pulled into, everyone needing to be like a Wendy's Twitter brand, I feel like we could have seen a timeline where a modern day Pepsi was like, yeah, what if we bring this back? What if we just lean into this? And I feel like that would be very difficult to do without looking really cynical about it, but
they got stars too. Mike Tyson is in one of these. He's in a fight with Mike Tyson. There's an 8-minute compilation of every Pepsi Man commercial that looks to be like, I don't know, upscaled somehow because these look too clear, and it's a trip. I highly recommend everybody go watch it. I'm also a little bit, I don't know if this happens in the game, but like when Pepsi Man like opens his mouth, because his face, you know, he's wearing like a whole bodysuit and like his head is just perfectly smooth. There are no features on it. But when he opens his mouth, there is all of a sudden a giant gaping hole in the middle of his face. And it's kind of
it's upsetting.
Creepy. Yeah, it's upsetting. I don't like it.
Yeah, I think the idea is it's not a bodysuit at all, but rather he is just like a sentient titanium man.
Silver Surfer kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so the hole does appear in the game, but obviously very pixelated, so...
Yeah, I think I always kind of read it as like a Terminator 2, like liquid metal kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I've been watching some footage from a long play while we've been talking about it, Brend, and there are a lot of sections of this game that are effectively auto-scrollers or whatever, but there's some spots in here with some like actually interesting like momentum and locomotion that feel very like, oh, what's the word I'm looking for here? Kind of Incredible Crisis, or if we're looking at other like high energy PS1 games that are very like Rising Zan. I'm trying to think of other instances where people do very cartoonish.
Yes.
Yeah. Super sexy Ultra Hero Zan.
Yeah, there's no dull moments in the gameplay, which is pretty cool because it does kind of freshen things up with some odd scenarios like the... I'm pretty sure the skateboarding scene precedes Sonic Adventures. Very, very similar kind of gameplay on the... of getting basically just chased down the hill and stuff, so it's interesting to see that maybe Sonic ripped off Pepsi Man. I mean, I'm just going to throw that allegation out there.
I think we can say that definitively. This minecart level is just running circles around Donkey Kong Country.
Does Pepsi Woman ever appear in the game? Because apparently there was another mascot. There was a female version of the mascot named Pepsi Woman.
So Pepsi Woman was the Diet Pepsi mascot.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
As is typical.
There's actually Pepsi Lemon Twist as well, which is Pepsi Woman wearing a balaclava that looks like a lemon. Sometimes she appears. But on Pepsi Man, it's strictly about Pepsi Man. So it's there's a few extra skins in there, but sadly Pepsi Woman doesn't make an appearance. Maybe that was the sequel in a very Miss Pac-Man type vein. Perhaps we were going to get a full dedicated game to Pepsi Woman, but sadly, not in this one.
I love the idea this faceless character needs to wear a balaclava for some reason. Mask their identity.
I think like the idea behind that balaclava is like in the ad, Pepsi Woman's pretending not to be Pepsi Woman. So
of course
she's trying to give them the other drink without them knowing that it's Pepsi. But yeah, it's very weird. The ad, obviously my limited to no Japanese understanding, it's kind of hard to pick up, but that's my interpretation anyway.
So this is great, but it does remind me of the Burger King games, as Andrew mentioned, and I think one day we'll have to talk about, was it Big Bumpin'?
Yeah, we might as well throw Pocket Bike Racers in there as well.
Pocket Bike Racers, that's the one. Big Bumpin', is that bumper cars?
Yeah.
Okay, and Pocket Bike Racers is a racing game. Got it.
So I mean, I think that'd be cool to go through as well, just because I've heard there's a really weird history behind those games as well that's been covered.
Oh yes, there is. One Daniel O'Dwyer has done a great piece on that with no clip on YouTube if you're interested, folks at home. But,
I'm interested.
Yes, that was a very strange set of circumstances that brought us those cursed artifacts.
Yeah, strange. They're made in my hometown, Leamington.
Oh shit! Wow.
Yeah, by Blitz Games. Yeah, interesting. Yeah,
that is interesting.
And it only came out in created in the UK and only get released in the US. And backwards compatible now, right? They actually work on the Xbox Series.
Really?
So
They do?
sure.
That's incredible.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure they still work. I'm sure someone was testing them and they still work, yeah.
That's insane.
I think so.
Well, I remember, I mean, that might be the only game, Andrew would know this, you would know this. Is that the only game that was released, like, technically across Xbox and Xbox 360? Like, it was one disc, right?
To my knowledge,
and you could play it in both consoles.
Because yeah, there are two. Yeah. I don't know if it's two separate executables or how it's actually broken up on the disc, but I believe there's just like an XISO and a .xbe, if I recall. But yeah, there is an Xbox game and an Xbox 360 game on each of those discs. They were, I believe, $3 a piece or $3.99 or something like that. But I just bought them in a drive-through window. it was what, like 2005, 2000. I didn't even have a 360
Yeah.
at the time, but my rich friend did.
It's crazy.
He also had a big old HD CRT, which is how we were able to read anything playing Dead Rising.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so stories for
and
other
they, and they had achievements, right, as well. They were like full
probably, I
games.
believe so, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they would have had to have done back in the day on the 360,
Yeah.
right? They would have.
Just very early days for the 360 as well. So yeah, any excuse you could to get people invested into your
You game the score, yeah.
your walled garden.
All right.
I mean, in terms of Pepsi Man, I'm happy to kind of wrap it up on the notes that I've said so far. It's definitely worth playing, more so for the obscurity than anything else. But yeah, I'm actually going to end on a slightly sad note with it though, and say that they did release the soundtrack of this game on vinyl. I think it must have been about 4 or 5 years ago now, because it was posted in our Discord when it went live, and I bought it and it just never arrived. It was during COVID.
Oh, no.
It just never actually. I think maybe
God.
Benfact in the Discord also ordered it, and his did arrive. And yeah, I emailed and just never got anything back. I've still got the receipt, and it's just like, oh.
Did you
So
get
I'm
a
just-
refund? Did you get your money back?
They just didn't acknowledge the email, so it was.
Oh no.
It's a bit of a shame. It was
Tragic,
cheap to
I'm
be
sorry.
fair. It was like £18 or something, but yeah, it was more disappointing. It was definitely during COVID, I think, so it must have been 2020. I'll check in with Benfact on that, but
Pepsi Man has not gotten a lot of work in like the last 25 years. He kind of could use.
He's been on the couch, just chain
Right.
smoking,
Bring him back.
and
Yeah.
drinking RC cola over
Yeah.
can after can.
Your money went to someone who needed it.
yep.
On that
right.
note,
We're gonna move on. Paul, you want to talk about the next one?
Yeah, absolutely. So as soon as we started to come up with this idea of running games, Mirror's Edge was the game that came to me immediately, which I found to be a fascinating game. So I played it when it came out, and I finished it, and I really enjoyed it. But I was awful at it. I was clunky into the walls and jumping up and everything, and I found it fascinating. And then you go and watch people play on YouTube, and it was like they were playing a different game. Like the way they could string all these moves together and stuff, and it made it look like it's poetry going through these levels. But I thought it was really cool. It was a really interesting game, and I think it had that vibe as well. I really like the sort of visual art style to that game and the whole sort of feeling of the theme of it, and it was just really cool. Yeah, it was a fascinating experience actually, and that was Don't know what you guys' experience was with Mirror's Edge.
I played it briefly. I can't remember if I think I might have had like GameFly at the time, or if it wasn't that, like I rented or I like borrowed my brother's copy or something like that. And I played it for a bit, and I remember being absolutely taken aback by like just the appearance of it, and just like a stunning game. It's still aged like phenomenally well. And then I, like a lot of really interesting games back then, I just never went back to actually finish the thing. So
it's like
It's
2
on me.
hours long, dude.
yeah, I don't know what it was. I was
sure.
like, this is really, really cool. And then I don't know, I went back to playing some like GT5 Prologue or something. I have no idea. But yeah.
It was short. It came out, I think it came out similar time to Dead Space.
Yes.
I remember playing that, and both EA games, obviously, at a similar time. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that was their big push.
It's cool to have that music, that soundtrack, the title screen, the main theme for it. It was cool. And then they released the time trials, didn't they? I can't remember if that was extra content after the game came out. And these really sort of they weren't like buildings and stuff. They're like cubes in the middle of space. They looked like something out of Sonic or something, or like jumping around. And they were fascinating, and they held like online leaderboards for them and stuff like that. It was really cool, interesting.
Yeah, I think they kind of knew they were making speedrunner bait. You know, I think there are some tools built
Right,
in to
absolutely.
measure some of your like times and progress and stuff throughout that game. I played through it on PS3 back in the day, I think, just because I had recently gotten a cheap PS3 and wanted to play something, and that was probably on PS Plus or something. But yeah, the game is fascinating. I remember at the time hearing a lot of I feel like the prevailing what's the word I'm looking for? Sentiment at the time that I was hearing a lot was like, yeah, the game has a lot of really cool movement tech in it, but there's also a lot of really bad gunplay. And people just talking about like assuming that EA pressured DICE into making it a shooter, I guess, or something. And I don't know, man. I wasn't there. That was many years ago, and hearsay and assumptions anyway. But to be stubborn, my first playthrough, I made sure that I just never picked up a gun after the tutorial. I was Googling it to make sure, okay, what are the trigger points that are going to stop me from getting the trophy for never firing a gun?
That's right. There's a trophy for finishing the pacifier trophy. That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that was going to be my question: is how hard is it to avoid shooting anything?
It's not. You just run and jump on stuff. It's fine.
Okay. You could slide right and stuff. You could sort of
scissor kick dudes when you slide and stuff. There are a lot of good ways.
Yeah, and it was definitely designed around being able to do it without combat, without shooting as well.
Yes, I believe you can hold guns as long as you don't fire one and still get the trick. Because there's disarm maneuvers you can do, and then you can just throw the gun
the
away.
Results, yeah. You get the gun, but at least they don't have it.
Yeah, but Paul, I like your point about that game looking like a completely different game when you watch like really high level play of it. I really love games where just the movement is the skill ceiling for that stuff is really high. Watching speedrunners play like Jet Set Radio Future or Mega Man X or just any game that's really zippy like that is fascinating, especially when they've memorized all their routes and stuff, because it is like watching someone play Wipeout or something where they're just like throwing the back end of their craft around corners and stuff with like expert abandon instead of reckless abandon and seeing the things that people can do inside the confines of Mirror's Edge. Even all these years later, people are still developing new movement and route tech and stuff in that game, and it's fascinating. It's really, really cool. There's a very high skill ceiling to that game. It's kind of the opposite of like something like Vanquish, the Platinum shooter from similar era, which is a very, very low skill ceiling, I think, by comparison. That is a game that is wants you to be able to do a lot of cool stuff really easily, but there's not actually necessarily a lot that you can do from there, if that makes sense. Like, there's not a lot you can do with the tools and verbs that they give you beyond their stated purpose, if that makes sense. Whereas I feel like Mirror's Edge is gives you a few tools to play with and then says, here, just start connecting these things in whatever way feels like natural and frictionless to you. And I think as familiarity grows with that game, it's easy to start like letting your own kind of mental hang-ups, I guess, melt away as you get into that flow and you just start like reacting to pieces of, parkour sets in the environment, I guess, before you consciously notice them, if that makes sense. You just kind of start moving. Sorry, I've been monologuing for a long time. That game's neat.
That's cool. And I never played the sequel, actually. The sequel was much bigger game, wasn't it? It had quests and you met NPCs on it and you did missions and stuff from there, I think. But I didn't. I never actually played it, no.
I just want to run around and go Neum.
That was gonna be my question, was how was the sequel? But I also, like, as I'm looking at like images of this game again, was this like the game that dragged us out of like the next gen filter everything brown era? Because I feel like after this, because this was like 2008, after this things started to get better. Yeah,
I think it definitely helped in the look, video games can look like blue skies again and stuff, right? Pretty, as opposed to grungy and dirty. Yeah, absolutely.
It's probably a game. Don't you go, Andrew?
Oh no, I was just saying, sometimes gray boxing your level and leaving it that way can be a aesthetic choice. If you lean into it, you can actually make that look really cool.
Probably be a really easy game to remaster as well, like just because of all the use of flat colours and that sort of thing. Like you could probably just crank that to 4K, smooth some things out, and it would still look really good.
Yeah, because at the time the PC version as well was incredible. Like the PS3 one was 30 frames a second, as all games were back then, right, pretty much. And it was the PC one was like a remarkable jump in fidelity. It was great. So yeah, a remaster would be cool.
I bet that game probably emulates pretty well at this point now as well. I've not tried, but
I mean, there's got to be. Do they still sell the PC version of the first one on like digital storefronts? Or
let's find out. I don't know. Does anyone have EA Origin? Oh, it's not called Origin. Is it? Whatever.
It's on Steam. It's
I
$20
because it would never launch correctly.
$20 still.
$20 on Steam. The first Mirror's Edge.
Yeah, there you go. And the sequel is currently $2.99.
Wow.
Oof. Wow. That one wasn't well regarded across the board, was it? If I remember right, like I don't think it kind of missed the point of the first game's simplicity and.
It did.
It seemed like the kind of thing where it was like, hey, this thing was like a huge, like fan favorite game, and people have been asking us to throw them a bone for many years. Let's give them something. And then it was like, oh, but we also need to make our money back to be able to justify this. So let's put a bunch of other things in there and focus test it.
Yeah.
And then it came out being something very, very different that kind of no one was looking for. Or at least, again, that's the story that I was told about this game, I feel like, through like cultural osmosis or whatever. But a good friend of mine insists that that game actually rules really hard if you ignore that stuff and just go new.
Wow.
Just run and jump a lot.
It's the type of game then that somebody might make like a mod version of it, just like to streamline it down to exactly the way the first game was and just remove all that other stuff. Could imagine that.
Yeah, I wish I had more say on it personally, but I just think it looks really pretty.
It does.
That's
Soundtrack
all I
is
got.
excellent as well.
All right, so I'll move on to mine if I may, and this one I feel like is going to garner a lot of differing opinions. So when I thought of a running game, the first game that came to my mind was Sonic R because it's probably the earliest game I ever played where running was a focus that was also a racing game. I mean, like I didn't grow up with a lot of Sonic, even though we had like a Sega Saturn and stuff. My family, I really just wanted to race, and like the Sonic, the original Sonic games at that point. So we're talking about like the Genesis Mega Drive games. Like I think we had Sonic Jam on the Saturn, so I would revisit those through that compilation. But when you're a kid, you're especially at that time, I was like, I don't want to play this like weird 2D thing. I want to not be able to control Sonic at breakneck speeds and hit every single obstacle on this very confusing track. And so I played a lot of Sonic R when I was a kid, and I revisited it a bunch of times over the years. It's never been the kind of game that I would ever say is like a favorite, but I did revisit it ahead of this podcast. I played through the whole thing, which does not take long. I mean, it would take long if I didn't save state incessantly, but you have to with this game because the controls are so terrible. But it's really weird because like it's a very charming game for so many reasons. It has that like love it or hate it soundtrack, TJ Davis, every song.
Who hates the Sonic?
Oh, there are people. Well. So if you go back and you look at reviews, like that was actually a complaint for a lot of like publications at the time. Was that like
I'm about to act up.
Yeah, was that it's annoying, and actually
we're gonna have a problem.
Like the lead designer or one of the main people on the game was a producer or something, fought for the instrumentals to be included in the soundtrack. So in the settings you can just choose instrumental versions of those songs because they were worried that it was going to put people off. And originally I think it was set up so that like the vocal versions were buried, like they were automatically off, but then developing the game and stuff, they came around, they were like, you know what, these sound really good, we like them, grew on them, and they decided to put that forward. So
if you don't have anyone asking if you can feel the sunshine, how are you going to notice it organically? I know. Apparently she came in, so TJ Davis, British singer, she came in to record Supersonic Racing, the title track we all remember, know and love from Sonic R. And something I read, I've
seen it attributed to Yuji Naka, but maybe not. Maybe it was just someone else at Sega. But I read something that said that like Yuji Naka loved that song so much that she demanded that they try to bring her back to do vocals for all the other songs as well. So, so yeah, she clearly, and I mean she, Richard Jakes, of course, composed the soundtrack. They would work together again, him and T.J. Davis on MSR. Because she did a couple songs in MSR as well. So, yeah, this is... the soundtrack in and of itself is just, like, one thing about Sonic R, though. I mean, it's one of the few Saturn games that, like, looks good. Like, one of the few, like, 3D polygonal Saturn games that, like, looks good in a way that isn't just, like, looks good for Saturn. Like, it legitimately, it's a very pretty game. Everything's covered in, like... these like gradients and like everything's just like kind of bubblegum gradients, and they actually have like really sophisticated like transparency. Like this game has pop-in, but they hide it with transparency, which like to my knowledge I was like, you can't do that on Saturn. And sure enough, the one of the guys who worked on the game, actually he has a YouTube channel, and I really should have this open. So the channel's called Game Hut. And I really feel bad that I cannot remember this guy's name. I will find it. John Burton. John Burton from Traveler's Tales, who developed the game. He goes into like how they did it, like how they were able to perform transparency and stuff like that on the Saturn. And I'm not smart enough to understand it, but it's really cool. Yeah, just really, and I mean. Again, yeah, it controls like shit. Trying to steer Sonic in 3D space is an impossible task in any game. I don't blame TT for that at all. It's just a bad concept. But it's very charming, and at least with an emulator today, you can just like, every time you run into something, you just restart the level. It's fine. You know? It's not a big deal.
Did it support the analog controller?
It did, and I think that definitely helps, the 3D analog pad. The other reason I still tend to like this game is because it does something that another racing game that I like a lot more, but I have massive respect for, did as well, which is Beetle Adventure Racing. And the thing that links those two games is they are racing games, but they are also exploration games. So with Sonic R... there's like two collectibles basically in the level. There's every track has 1 or 2 Chaos Emeralds, and then they also have these coins. And, the emeralds and the coins are hidden in certain places. A lot of them are hidden behind doors that you have to have like a number of rings to progress through the door to pick up whatever that object is. And by unlocking these, or by getting these things and finishing first, or finishing, I think, first, second, or third, you get to unlock characters. I think by collecting Chaos Emeralds, you get Super Sonic, Yellow Sonic. That's Super Sonic, right? That's
Goku.
Yep.
Goku. Sure, Goku. Yes, Hedgehog Goku. And once you do, he's by far like the best character in the game. He's great.
Yeah.
It's a maddening game, but again, there's something that keeps me coming back, and I'm interested to know if you guys have ever played much of it.
Yeah, so for me, my exposure to the game was actually would have been Sonic Gems Collection. I think it was on the PlayStation 2. Yeah, so it was Gems Collection for me, and that was included with I think it was Sonic CD, Sonic the Fighters, and something else. I can't remember what the other one is, but yeah, that was my first exposure to it on the PlayStation 2. And like you were saying, Adam, controls gameplay wise, not exactly the best in the world. It's enjoyable enough if you're a Sonic fan to try and put up with it, but really the main strength of the game is the just general vibes of the thing. I think obviously the soundtrack is what obviously takes precedent with the conversation, but I really like the kind of almost Sonic CD bonus stage like environments that the tracks kind of take place in. That's what I've always kind of thought it reminds me of, like those bonus stages and those weird like 3D areas that Sonic Mania brought back as well. And yeah, like the exploration piece as well, because obviously once you start to realise trying to actually enjoy the racing element is a bit of a bum steer. The enjoyment really comes from trying to actually just get what you can out of the game, and the exploration part is definitely where I found the most enjoyment, alongside the general vibe of the game and I think Amy drove a car, if I can remember correctly, as well in this game. So, but the physics still seem predicated towards running, so it's just a very strange experience. But one thing about Supersonic, just because we were talking about that, am I imagining, or did you have to have rings to actually like go at full speed as Supersonic in Sonic R? I can vaguely recall it still used the ring like mechanic that the games had, but I might be just misremembering something there because it has been a while since I've played, but I'm sure that his speed is kind of throttled by how many rings he has. But yeah, it's just something that popped into my head when we were talking about Supersonic.
That might be the case. See, I unlocked him. I didn't unlock all the characters, but I unlocked him, and I didn't notice that. And I'm not actually seeing it. Sonic Retro, by the way.
Maybe
God, this is the only time I'll ever say this. God bless the Sonic community and their peerless record keeping. There is so much information on this game that nobody likes except for them, for the most part, and it's really, really sweet. Because a lot of the times when we talk about games on Time Extend, there's just I think by nature of racing games, they're not very well covered. Their histories aren't very well known. I do want to read this one quote very quickly. Thankfully, it's been preserved on Wikipedia. So I think years later, Hirokazu Yasuhara, Sonic designer, worked with Traveler's Tales on the game. He said in an interview, quote, the final version of Sonic R is actually quite good. However, I do admit that the base concept of Sonic R, in which a player drives running characters, is not great. That pretty much sums it up.
He's never played Pepsi Man, that's the trouble.
Exactly. The last thing I want to call out about this game, actually, is the amazing Chaos Emerald screen at the end of the races. So whenever you get a Chaos Emerald at the end, it comes up and shows you how many you've got. But like rather than have specific ones for like Chaos Emeralds or Emerald, it just says you got Chaos Emerald bracket S.
S, yeah.
Brackets. So like it was just, they couldn't be bothered putting 2 in there. They just, yeah.
And if you don't,
who needs 2 lock strings when you can do 1?
If you don't finish first, you also don't get the emerald. So what ends up happening is like it appears on the screen like the spinning like diagram or whatever, the picture, the GIF of the emerald basically, and then it falls, and behind is the word no. So it's no Chaos Emeralds. It's
that rules.
It is a strange game. I have one interesting fact that blew me away. I did not know this, and I don't think you guys know it either. Did you know that this was originally supposed to be a Formula 1 game?
I did not.
Yeah. Really? So what happened was, and this is also something
same
that we
tracks,
know to be
right?
true.
Same courses.
Same tracks. Yes, exactly. It was Motor Tune Grand Prix, but with F1 cars.
No, other way around.
Yeah. That Game Hut channel from John Burton of Traveler's Tales, he posted a video actually where there is a model of a McLaren, the McLaren F1 team, like that era car. It's in the game files, like it's in there, and he put it back together. It has Marlboro on it and everything. And basically, what I've seen anyway, as I understand it, is Sega wanted a Formula 1 title for the Saturn. Now, what's weird is they had F1 Challenge, so I guess they wanted someone else to do it. And they want something to compete with, Bizarre Creations doing Formula 1 on the PlayStation. So they hired...
about in a minute.
Yeah. So it's true. So they hired Traveler's Tales to do it, but then what ended up happening, I guess as they were working on it, is Sonic Extreme did not come out. It got canceled. Yeah. So Sega was like, well, how can we use this like racing game in the works? Because back then, I mean, they developed this whole game in 9 months apparently. So things moved a lot more quickly back then. I think even for that time that was still pretty fast.
That's quick. Yeah.
But yeah, so then they just kind of recast it into a Sonic racing game, and
jeez.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Wow. And it was the only Sonic game on the Saturn, right? It didn't have its... Saturn never had its own Sonic
Unless you count
platform game, did it?
I guess, right?
Well, the Jam was a compilation, wasn't it?
Yeah, but Jam
had that little bonus level, didn't it?
Yeah, Jam had Sonic.
But it never had its own...
Which might be my
never had its own actual game.
Yeah,
3D Blast,
3D
but-
Blast is on Saturn. I have it
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah, but that also
Right.
released across generations too. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was on other
Yeah.
stuff as well.
Is that
So,
right?
yeah, I think that little running around area in Jam might be my favorite Sonic related thing.
That's yeah.
I realize
It
that's a backhanded compliment,
something.
but I like it. It's cozy. It's cute.
it is really cool. I used to like just run around that area a lot.
The water's just a texture on the ground that's blue. There's no water there. It's great. It works.
Yeah, that's the thing about Sonic R though, is that like it's a great game. What I think is really funny is that like I can get lost in exploring those levels, right? And just even like getting into places where I'm not supposed to go, which is actually a little bit harder than you might think. Like they do a surprisingly good job of walling off the levels. And there's even parts where like the game, because if you look at the track map from above, it is complete nonsense. It's like utter
looks so
fucking
leaky.
mayhem. And like there are points where like you take a shortcut and it's very easy. It's like the game wants you to then get back on the regular track going the wrong way. And there's even times there's one spot on the Reactive Factory track where I noticed that when you're going the right way, the game tells you you're going in reverse. So it even confuses itself sometimes. But what I think is really funny is that when you're doing a race, as soon as all the other competitors cross the finish line, the race automatically ends whether or not you have yourself. So the game almost puts a time limit on how much you can explore the level. Like,
Is that like the Sega GT Online thing where just as soon as someone wins the race, it's over?
it's over. It's over. No more racing. Everyone go home.
Who came in second? Doesn't matter.
All right. That's all I have to say on Sonic R. We got to keep moving because I think we have 2 more games to talk about. So, is it time?
I suppose so. Is that me then?
That's you.
Okay. I've been very busy lately, folks, so I apologize. I've not brushed up on either of these games as much as I would have liked to ahead of time, but when we first half-jokingly talked about running games, the first 2 things that came to my mind were, number 1 is an Xbox game by Crystal D called Mad Dash Racing, which is the other Sonic R in my brain in terms of like little cartoon animal characters running around a course. The difference is Mad Dash controls much more like a regular kart racer with like jumpy platformy physics, but has way less personality than Sonic R, whereas Sonic R is uncontrollable but boundlessly delightful in spite of the presence of the hated blue rat boy. That's about all I have to say about Mad Dash Racing. I popped in an OXM disc and played a demo, and I was like, "Yep, this exists. It's fine. You could do worse." That's about all I got. There may be more to dig into there if someone wants to spend the time someday, but I just don't have a lot for it there. There just was not a lot of meat on the bone. That I was able to encounter, at least. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I didn't know what you were talking about at all, but then as soon as I looked up cover art for the game, I was like, yes, I remember this. I remember this very well. I never played it, but it's just one of those things, like, because we're still at this point. This was on the original Xbox.
Yep, and nothing
2001.
else, which I thought it
Oh,
was.
this was a launch title.
Yep.
Oh shit! So yeah, at this point we are very much still in the throes of like the Toad mascot era. Like this was like in the next couple of years it would die down, but I think it was still really important to have like mean, angry, furry cartoon characters in your games.
Yeah.
And this kind of proves it.
This is kind of that last, like, I don't think it actually died down until the crown was given to our boy Clank or whatever his name. Not Clank. What's the Mark Cerny game? No, the
Knack.
There
Knack.
we go.
Oh, no.
Clank. It's like Clank with a K, and I was like, not Ratchet Clank. What's the other guy? And I was like, Mark Cerny's weird little wooden pet friend thing. But no, I was gonna say like this kind of came out of an era where you have like Ty the Tasmanian tiger and Cow the kangaroo, and like just so many of these new 3D Arrow the Acrobats and Bubsies of the
There
new
was-
generation.
There was nothing more offensive to me as a kid than like when I'd see a game like that and it'd be like, it's Ty, the Tasmanian. Like, Ty? Like, I don't know, who the fuck is this guy? Like, where did he come from? Why should I care about him? No, it's just like, it's like, it's trading
What if
on
there was
nothing.
a little guy going around, and then you just gotta trust that?
How is he different from all the other little guys?
I don't
Didn't
know.
you see the
'cause, like, how do you-
advertising, Adam? he was kicking Sonic and stealing Mario's hat. And,
Oh, he was that guy. Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, that's definitely why I should have cared about him.
He was throwing a Super Nintendo and a Mega Drive into a big chest in the attic, covered in dust, telling you to do the math. I'm combining a lot of things right
that's
now.
a lot
I'm
of
sorry.
different things. Wait for Jaguar Racing Games. That episode is coming soon.
That's a short episode. I might actually have all of those at this point. Dude,
So as soon as you started talking about that, I was thinking about Pen on the Dreamcast.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
the Triathlon.
yeah.
Pen Triathlon.
Yeah, Triathlon. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, amazing.
Looking at gameplay for this one, it reminds me of Rayman M, actually. Did anybody play that by any chance? Rayman M was actually a running racing game.
I was gonna say, was there
that's
also a
literally
Rayman
just...
kart runner?
Actually came out 2 weeks after Mad Dash.
Oh, well. Yeah, that wasn't great either.
Nope.
The controls are very floaty. There's nothing really descriptive about it aside from it looks at Mad Dash, and by the sounds of it, Mad Dash looks like Rayman M. So
Okay,
I guess
yeah.
they have a weird cross-functional relationship going on there. But
So that was Rayman Arena in the States.
Yes.
oh,
which is why-
okay. Right,
Which I always
makes
assumed that
sense.
was like a party game or like a
Yep.
Power Stone type thing or something without looking at it.
Not
Yeah, no,
not
it's
very
just,
well
running game.
advertised.
Interesting.
There's a really like funky final level in that game. Like the final boss is like a wireframe level for some reason, for some undiscernible reason. But that's like the thing I remember the most because obviously when you're younger you remember strange levels like that, like Lava Land and Tokatu and that sort of thing. And yeah, that's all I can remember from it really.
Yeah, the end of the intro paragraph on Wikipedia says it is split into 2 game modes, both supporting up to 4 players, on-foot racing and arena-based battles.
Wait, there was battles?
Apparently.
I don't think I ever
All right,
done that.
well, I guess we need to check out Rayman Arena at some point. Put it on your list. Does
This
anyone?
racing does not look good. Just looking at the gameplay, it's as if they just took the 3D platformer physics and made really linear racetracks from it.
They could have.
It looks like.
Looking for images, I stumbled across a screenshot of the game from some like scam site that's like advertising it, and it's title of the page is Rayman Arena Definitive Edition, 52%
Oh.
off.
Amazing. Got to pick that up.
Does
Game of the Year edition.
that just mean not the PS2 port? Because apparently that one's got some frame rate issues. I don't know. I'm literally just reading Wikipedia into a microphone. This is not good radio here.
A lot of people get away with that.
Let's talk about the game. That's true. But let's talk about the game you guys came to talk about.
Yes, the
pivot
other
into-
the other actual game that I think Paul and I both defaulted to, which is Bizarre Creations' 2008 release, The Club. Which is not actually a running game, weirdly enough. It's a very strange, like, I remember being very, very interested by the concept and then seeing footage of it and being like, oh, never mind. And then I picked up a copy of it again recently when we were talking about this a couple weeks ago,
Okay.
and yeah, there's even less meat on this bone maybe than Mad Dash, but it is an interesting game that I think needs to be described at least. So if the people at home somehow do not remember the earth-shattering cultural megaton moment that was The Club, it is okay. So Bizarre Creations, who we know and love here on the show, experimented with some other types of video games here and there that were not racing projects anywhere near Gotham City, or wars of geometry shapes. But yeah, anyway, The Club is a third-person shooter with like Tony Hawk-esque combo mechanics, I guess you could say, but they're very, very light. and not nearly as well integrated as like I guess like I think the closest thing I could think of in terms of like modern equivalent would be Rollerdrome from, was that 2022 I think.
Yeah.
And that game does a very good job of having you constantly moving. And why didn't I should have just come here to talk about Rollerdrome. Anyway, instead of talking about the club because I'm broken. But you know, Rollerdrome, you're on roller skates, and the club, there are neither I was gonna say there are neither rollers nor dromes, but I don't really know what a drome is, and the club feels kind of dromey to me. But no, it is it's a kind of like how would you describe the premise? Future apocalyptic game show, Smash TV style, a little bit.
Like Running Man, right? It was kind of, I think that was a nod to that.
Yeah, very Running Man. What does it say about me that my first go-to is Smash TV before running? Yeah, it's a lot of very Xbox 360 looking warehouses that you are kind of awkwardly running around in with a kind of over-the-shoulder, like, I don't know if this actually is in Unreal Engine 3, but it certainly looks like it at first glance.
There's arrows everywhere. Like,
everything's
telling you where to go. It's really funny.
Yeah, there's an idea here where it wants you to like do cool tricks, you know, like shoot a dude while jumping up off a rail or whatever, but like it's got like 10% of the steez that like Stranglehold did around the same time, you know, which was much better about the like kind of Devil May Cry style, like trying to judge your flashiness and the stylistic gameplay on the fly, I guess. A little bit more subjectively, quote unquote, whereas the club is much more concerned with combo meters and trying to keep up score multipliers and the more arcadey and less kinesthetic aspects of that kind of thing. And the ultimate point that I'm trying to get to is I think the actual vision of the club that works is the Mercenaries mode in Resident Evil 6, a game that everyone hates, and I played through for the first time like a month ago, and unsurprisingly was like, oh, this rules! Anyway, but the multiplayer Mercenaries in that game is really, really fun. That's just like Capcom at the top of their like third-person action game design stuff in there. And it's a very good version of that, but it's funnier for time extent if we center the conversation around a game like the club. So here we are. Speaking of Richard, I'm just going to keep calling him Jacques until he personally corrects me. Fine. Richard Jakes was also composer on that game, along with one Jesper Kid and Chris Chudley. But I think it's funny that we have, you know, at least two of these very large name composers on a game that has immediately faded out of public consciousness like the exact moment that it arrived. It's exactly in the span of like, you know, Metacritic zone of like between 6s and like high 6s and low 8s. So it's exactly what you want to see. It's in that good zone.
Yeah. It looks very odd. I'll say that. Just looking at gameplay, like it kind of looks like something somebody would make in like Dreams or something like that. Like if they were trying to make a game, like it doesn't necessarily look bad, but like it's weird how it's got this really specific concept, but then visually and stuff they've just went for like the most entry level basic look to the game for a game that's trying to be something a bit more, I guess, kind of kooky.
It almost looks like the first time they showed off Brink before they tried to force a weird, like, cartoonish style onto Brink.
The first thing I thought of when I seen it for some reason was Mad World on the Wii. Like that was also like a weird...
I had to bring that up as well. Mad World at least had a style.
The black and white, it was cool. Yeah,
maybe burned my eyeballs a little bit after, half an hour, but it's something. And then, obviously that kind of got ditched for Anarchy Reigns after that, which looked more like a video game. But yeah, this is very much in that vein. I think on the edge of that is almost like Manhunt is sort of on that territory as well, but it's Manhunt is trying to do something tonally very different, let's say. But yeah, the club is. In my head, the club is a game where you run around a like little track, basically doing laps around a multiplayer map, the way that you do in like Quake 3 or whatever, where you start to like kind of like mentally just have your routes that you run around. Yeah, and the points that you know where to like jump at and stuff, because you're starting to think the way that, you know, like a Formula 1 driver does, where you look at your, you know, your markers on the course, and that's your mental note of like, this is where I start braking or whatever. Except obviously doing that in Quake is much more skillful and courageous and important. I think we can all agree. But no, it's the club is really not that. It's really just much more generic, slow, syrupy, clunky third-person shooter that feels very bad in the hands and has a lot of numbers popping up everywhere. So I guess this was my first example of coming on this show to not praise a video game, but I don't know. I think the reason that it's actually interesting is because there have been so many other versions of this idea in kind of like forked off in different directions, right, over the years. But like, even looking at it now, I'm still just like, there's something here. You could do something like, even there are elements of this you could add back into the like RE6 Mercenaries mode, that you could turn this into almost like a Sunset Overdrive kind of thing. I feel like, I don't know, watching the club is a frustrating experience, because even more so than just playing the club, because you could do something so cool with this now if you got someone to give you the money to do so.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the movement has to be like engaging, and it seems like everything I'm reading about is that it isn't. It seems
it's
like
so not. It's so slow.
It's pretty rigid.
Imagine like 50 Cent Blood on the Sand, but you're constantly egged on to keep moving, and also it has none of 50 Cent Blood on the Sand's hilarious story, voice acting, everything about that game.
Tony Yayo is nowhere near the club, and that's the main reason that the club fails. There's no one telling Fiddy to hit that big ass ramp, and that's disgusting, frankly.
What a game that is. So Paul, it doesn't sound like you were particularly high on it either.
No, not really, and I'm pretty much mirror what Andrew said with it. It was I just remember seeing it going, it's interesting. I guess you got bored of making PGR, right? And they wanted to make something different, which is fine, obviously. And I think a lot of teams that made racing games back in the day were in a similar position. They wanted to do something different, but
it does kind of feel like a side project got
spot.
greenlit. Right? Like instead of an incubation, like if someone was just like messing with an engine or whatever, and someone was like, "Yeah, we could turn this into something. We could ship this."
Yeah, I think Bizarre was really trying to reinvent itself. Because this was still obviously Sega published, so this was before Blur, before Activision came in, after all the Microsoft stuff. They're trying to branch out, and I don't know. I think they were a phenomenal studio. So I think this is just one of those things that like I don't know. Probably need a little bit more fleshing out. I think it says something that apparently they shopped this around to various different publishers, and Sega was the only ones that were like, yeah, let's try it. Seems like a game that Sega would be like, yeah, let's try it.
But also, especially we're talking 2008 Sega, exactly.
Yeah.
When they're like
very rough.
They are holding on for dear life at that time. Yeah,
right.
Especially over here in the West. But yeah, it's. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, so but as you said there, like the idea of a score action game, the combos and that's the thing that's a very popular thing in games, right? And like you said, in Mercenaries and Resident Evil, it's fantastic. They've done a really good job of it, and I think, it's almost like they looked at the club and gone, "We can do that," but in Resident Evil world, and
they did. They made something that's
maybe that was a catalyst. Maybe the club was a catalyst for it.
Yeah, and as a cooperative experience, like Mercenaries in RE6 is really, really fun. It's very satisfying. It is quick and nimble and feels really good. You have a very broad verb set. It's great. It's very expressive. Like you can do that. You can take the club and you can make something out of it. But I don't know. Seeing Bizarre Creations do something like this is like, I feel like it's hard not to also draw the comparison of Criterion making Black in 05, 06, something like that. Except that really is applying the spirit of Burnout to a different genre. Black is loud and explosive and destructive and over the top and ridiculous and
it's also see what you can do with renderware. Use renderware.
Everyone, please.
I mean, it was a cool engine.
Yeah. Whereas, like, the club doesn't have any of PGR's, sense of momentum and control and flourish and again, player expression. Like, the club is just slow and stodgy and awkward. You're moving through molasses all the time, and you have to aim down sights to pull your weapon up because it's a third-person shooter of the era, and it just takes forever. Just every little thing in it feels very heavy and syrupy, more so even than like Killzone 2. Like, it's very sluggish, in a way that feels intentional, and I can't figure out why yet. Like, that's a decision that somebody made, and I've not been able to figure out why it was built this way. Like, it wasn't on accident, right? Like, these things don't happen due to negligence or whatever. I just don't. It's not working for me. I don't know why. I don't know what they were necessarily going for on that front.
I think it didn't have much style to it either, unfortunately. And if it came out today, it would probably look like something like Super Hot, maybe, which is a very different game, but its visual style could actually work in the game like the club. Like, this completely abstract visual style would, make it more interesting, perhaps. But
or Mirror's Edge.
Or Mirror's Edge, indeed.
Again, gray boxing your level can work if you light it right. You don't need textures.
The club's coming back. They're going to do a club VR. I'm calling it now.
You could do that. You could make a cool club. See, that's the actual reason I want to talk about the club, I think, is because if you think about it for more than like 4 seconds, it's just like there are so many exciting things that aren't actually here, but you could see them.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that's the club. I want to go listen to the soundtrack now because I need to know what Richard and Jesper.
It doesn't seem like Richard Jake. He didn't do a lot of like hard. Like, I feel like this is gonna be like some kind of gritty, like hard rock and pound.
Yeah.
He doesn't really do that.
Is more Sega-y than you might expect, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the Sega. It seems like Sega, Bizarre, and Richard Jakes all have they like couldn't get away from each other. Like, across like 20 years, they just like even if the partnership didn't make any sense, they were there for each other.
Did the Sonic Transformed soundtrack as well, I think.
Oh yeah, it's true.
The All Stars Racing and Transformed. Don't think he did Team
Now, that's a
Sonic
video
Racing
game.
though. I don't think. But yeah, that is a video game.
He did some work for Big Big as well. He did work on little. I don't think Motorstorm, but he did some stuff for Little Deviants, which is a video game. Which is a video game.
Totally forgot about Little
Deviants. He came in studio once and he did some music for it. Yeah,
That's cool.
it's cool.
All right. Do we have time for one more? This
I got time if you guys do.
I've got
Go
it.
for it.
You guys
Go
got it.
for
All
it.
right. Cool.
Hey, got something?
We're coming on an hour and a half, so I just want to make sure before we talk about Running High.
Right.
This game, oh man, I don't think we're going to be talking about Running High that long. It's
I was
just
trying to see if I had a copy of Deck Athlete on the Sega Ages 2500 collection on PS2. I was like, I don't know if that counts.
this game. I mean, sure, why not? I was thinking of all those like Olympic running games. Have at it, but no, Running High is something quite different. So Running High is a PlayStation game developed by System Satcom, which is a developer I know nothing about. Published by a company apparently called Rex Entertainment, and this was the only game that they ever put out.
They must have loved it.
They absolutely must have loved it. It's the Rally Day Africa of running games. This company came and went like a flash in the pan.
Rules.
Yeah, no, unfortunately it doesn't work. Actually, I forgot. I have that on my notes. System Satcom did work on the Saturn port of Radmobile, which is Gale Racer, and that isn't very good either. So, yeah, we're not working from a great spot here. I want to say it's a bad game. So the idea here is it is the most, like, if you were to think of a running game where you race, you think of like your typical 90s arcade racing game, very like linear tracks. Think of Ridge Racer, sure, whatever. It's that, but you run. That's literally what the game is. It's like there's nothing to it. There's even like
this game.
There's even the drift mechanic.
Yes, I've seen this.
There's a drift mechanic and it works the exact same way it works in Ridge Racer, where you just your thumb off the accelerator, I guess if you want to call it that, and then you start drifting. Yeah. It's a funny game. It does not control. I won't say it controls badly, but it's so rigid that it's also not fun. The soundtrack's actually pretty decent. The soundtrack kind of slaps actually. It's got sort of like an arrow gauge thing going on.
I'm just watching the intro and my god, absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
There's a character in it called Doris.
Yes, that's the American. So I was reading. Thankfully, there is this website, or somebody had this blog named Ribbon Black where they write.
I thought you were going to say running
sports
high
games
or something.
No, and this person's writing about sports games, and this is an entry from 2017. This is literally like one of the first things that shows up when you Google search running high. It's just this person just talking about it, and I have to thank them a lot because they transcribe the plot synopsis from the menus, which the menu actually looks. It's a pretty cool looking menu, honestly, front end. But here's a synopsis. In the year 2000, humans developed Ultimate, a system that allowed the human brain to directly interface with machines. This led to the creation of robotic power suits known as component muscle. However, use of component muscle was deemed too dangerous to be used by just anyone due to the potential for criminal activity. Thus, component muscle was restricted to military use and in the ultimate future sport, running high.
Shout out to the very first comment here I see on YouTube. It just says they should have called it Man Turismo.
Missed opportunity.
Also, shout out to Ribbon Black, aka my longtime internet friend Ashley.
Oh, really? Oh, awesome. Glad that it all came around.
Yeah,
thank you for
doing
writing
all
about
kinds
it.
of incredible documentation for a lot of like old Namco stuff specifically. I think they're over at Way Forward these days. Anyway,
sick. Yeah, no, this game is something. There's a shockingly like low amount. Like you would think like it's a weird game. It must have weird gameplay mechanics. No, the only one that's a little novel is that like when you are basically drafting another runner, you can press a button where you just like speed up and then you vault over them. You basically leapfrog them to get ahead. You can also punch other runners road rash style, but it does nothing. Like it does literally nothing. Like they fall behind you for a little bit, but then they're like right back in front of you in not that much time.
Yeah. I'm watching gameplay. It doesn't seem that great. I just seen a sign that said running high 2014, which is really confusing given that apparently it all kicked off in 2020. So.
Well, yeah, it says it started in the year 2000, but then in the game there are all these textures that say 2014. Yeah. So I don't know. At some point within 10 years ago and 24 years ago, we were supposed to be able to do this, but it never happened.
It does have the one thing like from that era that I love, which is like massive advertising boards. Like obviously Gran Turismo had loads of them and that sort of thing, like on the tracks. I just love that sort of style element that was obviously just to cover the big empty areas behind the track. So it's got that going for it, at the very least.
Also, thank you to Ribbon Black for getting the screenshot of the baby, because apparently there is a playable baby, and when you race as the baby, all of the other racers or runners are also babies.
Perfect.
At least it's fair.
Yeah.
Sport and fairness. The running high universe.
And I have just imported a copy.
Beautiful.
Because I meant to whenever I first saw this game a long time ago and thought I had it and I do not.
I look forward to the Running High tribute song on Digital Motorsport 2 when you eventually...
No, please no. I listened to that album again the other day. I still think it's kind of not very good. Anyway.
It's great. It's great. We love it. Yeah, that's basically all I have to say on Running High. It's fucking weird. And also, like,
it's cool.
Very, very interesting. When I see games like this, it reminds me that, like, there was actually, like, a cottage industry of Ridge Racer clones. Like, that was a thing. It wasn't just, like, arcade racers. It was, like, games that feel and act and do everything the exact same way Ridge Racer does. But they were, like...
Even its map screen was like Ridge Racer, right? I'm just looking at a video now. Yeah.
It's like, let's do that, but you don't drive a car. That's right.
You run. The drift mechanic is incredible, though. I'm really glad that they established that humans can drift in some way. So
it doesn't really help. It doesn't help.
Really? What a shock!
Wait, because you don't really lose much speed when you hit it. So it's the opposite of Ridge Racer in the sense that, like, you don't lose any speed really when you hit a wall, which means that there's also really no incentive for you to, like, navigate the turns in any sort of a way that involves care. So you can drift or not. It doesn't really matter. But hey, it looks neat.
There's one thing that I've learned through looking up these games we've talked today, and it's the old adage that it doesn't matter what game you're looking at on the internet, there will be somebody who gasses it up. Like, when we were talking about Mad Dash, there was somebody saying, they missed a massive opportunity to make this their Mario Kart. And then on Running High as well, it's like, I've played this all the time. It's just, I feel like you can look up any game and there will be somebody somewhere who absolutely loves it. So, I mean, that's just beautiful, you know.
It's funny you say that because that gameplay video of the club I was just watching, top comment was like, everyone else says this game sucks, but it doesn't.
Fun game, yeah.
I'm not here to say the club sucks. I am here to say the club has potential. Sega let me make a club too.
Running High soundtrack also released by Avex Tracks.
Oh, I'm definitely going to give it a listen then.
Yeah,
that's a good sign.
That's quality.
Yeah, rubber stamped. There's actually something I was going to say, Andrew, when you brought up Rollerdrome. It's actually this month's PlayStation Plus game.
That's right. Yes, go play Rollerdrome.
Yeah,
so people can add it in their library. I think it's that and Foam Stars. So yeah, get added to the library.
How classically time extend is it that there is a new game that we could talk about that's actually better than most of these games, but we didn't. Just didn't do that.
It might be better than all of these games.
Yeah. It's just the way we do things. We focus on the wrong stuff, but somehow we have fun doing that. So,
look, there's plenty of people focusing on the right stuff.
Yeah. The Rollerdrome fandom probably video essays for days, you know. Like, we don't.
Someone's doing a lore dump for 4 hours into a webcam somewhere.
They're actually Wipeout pilots. They never made that. They never got to that point in the story yet. But yeah. This has been Time Extend Running Games. Thank you all so much. I guess before you guys are going to be on the show a lot more often, which we're definitely looking forward to. But I don't know if you want to while you have the floor. Is there anything you'd like to say? Is there anything you'd like to plug? Is there anything you'd like to say? Like, hey, I'm doing this. No? All right, great, wonderful.
I'm trying to handle
I'm under NDA. Yeah, I'm under NDA. I
Paul can't talk about anything. We don't know who Paul works for. We don't know what Paul does. Nobody knows anything.
Who he is? He just kind of showed up on this call.
He showed up. He was like, I love
stuff. I don't know.
He's like, I love games composed by Richard Jakes. And so,
that's right.
And so
you're among friends.
The MSR soundtrack. Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic.
I sent a single email, subject, Mirror's Edge. Body of email, Mirror's Edge. I was like, yeah, we'll get Paul.
That's all it takes to be on Time Extend. Any of you could do
point.
It. Yeah.
I like the cut of this guy's jib.
All right. Well, I don't have anything to share. Go join the Time Extend Discord as always. Go find us on the stupid bad app, but it's unfortunately where we kind of attached the horse that we attached our cart to that is slowly stumbling over and dying.
Just stop. Just stop logging. You don't have to be there anymore. There's nothing there. Just leave. Just hit the bricks, Adam.
But my only friend on co-host is you, Andrew.
No, come over to Blue Sky, dummy.
All right.
That's where everyone went.
We'll make a Blue
It's
Sky
coming.
to plug next time. So
yeah.
next time we're recording, we'll have a Blue Sky.
We'll
to plug
do
at,
the
I
Timix and
guarantee
Blue
it.
Sky. We have a TikTok.
Yeah,
We are on
there you go.
TikTok.
We have a
I've
TikTok.
not posted in a while, but we'll tick those talks soon enough. Just you wait. We'll be talking about the club, running high, all that stuff that the Gen Zers want. So
Yes.
God, do they want it?
I guess before we head out, I am just freelancing now at this point. So if you are looking for a UI UX designer or composer or just a visual designer in general, hit up your boy here over at elmore.design.
Andrew can do
Yeah.
literally everything. He can do. He can.
boy.
He can do it all. That's actually not going to help you.
You're writing a lot of checks. I don't know if I can cash you,
Yeah,
buddy.
yeah, that's not going to help you. I was just trying to say that your talents amaze me. You are an endless well of creativity.
Appreciate it. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to pay rent. is sort of my whole thing.
That's what I'm about. That's my. Go do that. Go check it out. And thank you all for listening as always. And we'll see you again soon.
thanks for listening, guys.
See you later. Bye bye.